Good morning, students of class 12th. It is P. Saravanan inviting you all for the distant learning of physics in chapter 1 electric charges and fields. Previously, you should have studied the contents under electric charges and fields in the form of PowerPoint 1 presentation. We stopped the PPT 1 with the topic Coulomb's law between two static electric charges. It is a continuation of that topic. Let us now discuss Coulomb's law in vector form. The first picture on the top consists of 2 point charges Q1 and Q2. From the point of observation O, R2 cap is the position vector of Q2 from O and R1 is the position vector of Q1 from O. So, the vector leading from Q1 to Q2 is given by vector R21 is equal to vector R2 minus vector R1. Similarly, the vector leading from Q2 to Q1 is given by vector R12 is equal to vector R1 minus vector R2. Also, you see in the picture on the top, the force experienced by the charge Q2 due to the charge Q1 is represented as a F21 vector, which is towards the right hand side, and the force exerted by Q2 on Q1 is represented as F12 vector, which is acting towards the left hand side. In the second picture below, can you see that the 2 point charges Q1 and Q2 repel each other? Yes, this is because Q1 and Q2 are like charges. Both may be positive or both may be negative, such that the product of Q1 and Q2 must be positive, which is greater than 0. So, the vector F21 is towards the right and vector F12 is towards the left. But the position vector from the charge Q1 to the charge Q2 is vector R21, whose unit vector from Q1 to Q2 is R cap 21. Below that, you can see 2 more point charges Q1 and Q2 which are attracting each other. That is why the force F12 vector and the force F21 vector are opposing each other. In this case, the product of the two charges, that is positive into negative or negative into positive, in both the cases, the product Q1 and Q2 will be less than 0. By the statement of Coulomb's law between two charges Q1 and Q2 located at R1 and R2 is expressed as F21 vector is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Q1 Q2 by R square 21 into R cap 21. This is also equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square 12 into negative of R cap 12. This is because the magnitude R21 cap and the magnitude R12 cap are equal. Only their directions are opposite. Hence, I can substitute R cap 21 is also equal to minus of R cap 12. Therefore, F21 vector is now equal to minus of 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Q1 Q2 by R square 12 into R cap 12, which is otherwise equal to negative of vector F12. Hence, it is proved that vector F21 is equal to minus of vector F12. Hence, Coulomb's law agrees with Newton's third law. Now, let us consider that a given charge is surrounded by two or more other charges. In the previous slide, we discussed how to find the force between 2 point charges only. Here, we are going to study the principle of superposition of charges, which is to find the force between multiple charges. In the picture, you can see a given charge Q1 at the center. It is surrounded by two other charges Q2 and Q3. The distance between Q1 and Q2 is taken as R12 and the distance between Q1 and Q3 is taken as R13. Naturally, you imagine a stone is being pulled by two persons in two different directions. So how many forces will be acting on the stone? Yes, two forces will be acting on the stone. In a similar way, in this picture, there are two forces acting on the given charge Q1. One is due to the charge Q2 and the other one is due to the charge Q3. So, if vector F12 represents the force acting on Q1 due to Q2 and if F13 vector represents the force acting on Q1 due to Q3, then the net force acting on the charge Q1 due to both Q2 and Q3 is F1 vector is equal to F12 vector plus F13 vector. The other equations can be substituted. So how many forces are acting on the charge Q1 here? Two forces. Imagine if Q1 is surrounded by four more charges, means how many terms will come on the right hand side? Good. Four terms must come. Like that, if n number of charges are surrounding the given charge Q1 means then n number of terms will appear on the right hand side. Based on this, now we are going to give the statement of the principle of superposition of charges. It states that the force on any charge due to a number of other charges is equal to the vector sum of all the forces on that charge due to the other charges taken one at a time. Let us now define electric field. Before that, let us recall what we studied in class 11th. Have you studied gravitational field? Yes. We have heard of gravitational field as the space or area surrounding any given mass. Inside this field, if any other mass like 1 kg or m kg is entering means it will experience a gravitational force. Similarly, you take a bar magnet. The bar magnet is surrounded by a magnetic field which is the area or space inside which any other magnetic substance or magnetic pole enters means that will experience a magnetic force. Like that, now electric field due to a given charge capital Q is defined as the space around it in which any other test charge small q experiences an electrostatic force, either repulsive or attractive, depends upon the given charge and the test charge. Now, the intensity of electric field, that is the strength of the electric field due to the given charge Q at a point in space, may be defined as the force that a unit positive charge plus 1 coulomb would experience if placed at that point. You take for example a charge plus Q is kept in space which is positive charge. This charge may have a weaker field or a stronger field. Okay, let us assume that the field surrounding the given charge Q is stronger. Then up to a very large distance it will have its influence. Suppose if the field Q is surrounded by a weaker field, then the distance up to which its influence can be felt will also be limited. In both the cases, electric field is defined as the space or area surrounding the given charge. Suppose if the given charge plus Q is positive and inside its field, if any other unit positive charge plus 1 coulomb is entering, means will it be repelled or attracted? Yes, it will be repelled. In place of plus 1 coulomb of charge, if you bring plus small q coulomb of charge, what will be the nature of the force again? Yes, since plus q also is positive, the nature of the force will be repulsive. And this force divided by the magnitude of the charge only is called as the electric field intensity at a given point. In general, electric field intensity is represented by vector E and its SI unit is Newton per Coulomb. The force exerted by the electric field E on the given charge small q is given by F equal to QE. If we denote the position of the charge small q inside the electric field as R vector, then force vector as a function of R is equal to the product of Q into E vector as a function of R. Let us now derive an expression for the electric field due to a point charge at a given point. Let capital Q be a point charge placed at O in air. A test charge small q is placed at a distance small r from capital Q. Now, according to Coulomb's law, the magnitude of the force experienced by small q due to capital Q is given by F equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into capital Q small q by R square. By definition, the electric field at a point P is the force per unit test charge. That is, capital E is equal to capital F by Q. That is equal to 1 by Q into 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into capital Q small q by R square. Here, the small q in the numerator and the small q in the denominator get cancelled. Therefore, capital E is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into capital Q by R square. So, from this expression, we find that the electric field intensity is inversely proportional to the square of the distance. This is only the magnitude. The direction of electric field E is along the line joining O and P, pointing away from Q if Q is positive and towards Q if Q is negative. In vector form, E vector as a function of R is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into Q by R square into R cap, where R cap is the unit vector pointing away from capital Q. We have just derived an expression for the electric field at a point due to a single charge. For a single charge, there will be only a single electric field at any point surrounding it. But for a system of so many charges, at the same point, there will be several electric fields. Consider a system of charges Q1, Q2, Q3 up to Qn with position vectors R1, R2, R3 up to Rn respectively relative to some origin O. The electric field E1 at the point P due to charge q1 at a distance r1p is given by the vector E1 equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r square 1p into r cap 1p. The electric field E2 vector at point P due to the charge q2 at distance r2p is given by E2 vector equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r square 2p into r cap 2p. Similarly, up to the nth charge we can get the similar expressions. According to the principle of superposition, we can get the net electric field at point P due to the system of charges q1 up to qn is vector E as a function of r equal to vector E1 as a function of r plus vector E2 as a function of r up to vector En as a function of r. Hence, the net electric field at any given point is equal to the vector sum of the electric fields at the same point due to the given system of charges. Let us go through the physical significance of the electric field. First one, electric field is an elegant way of characterizing the electrical environment of a system of charges. 2. Electric field at a point in the space around a system of charges tells us the force experienced by a unit positive test charge if placed at that point. 3. Electric field is a characteristic of the system of charges and is independent of the test charge that you place at a point to determine the field. 4. The true physical significance of the concept of electric field emerges only when we go beyond electrostatics and deal with time-dependent electromagnetic phenomena. The fifth point. To understand this fifth point, a special care must be taken. Consider two charges q1 and q2 in space. Let the charge q2 be at rest and the charge q1 be accelerated. That means it is moving with an acceleration. The accelerated motion of the charge q1 will produce electromagnetic waves which then propagate with a speed c equal to 3 into 10 power 8 meter per second, and then these electromagnetic radiations will reach the charge q2, as a consequence of which a force is caused on the charge q2. But this causes a time delay between the production of electromagnetic waves by q1 and the force acting on q2. Sixth point. Even though electric and magnetic fields can be detected only by their effects on the charges or the force acting on the charges, they are regarded as physical entities and not mathematical entities. Point number 7. Thus, a source of time-dependent electromagnetic fields turned on briefly and switched off leaves behind propagating electromagnetic fields transporting energy. Electric field lines. In the first picture, we can see a positive charge is placed at the center. Will there be an electric field surrounding this charge? Yes. Depending upon the magnitude of the positive charge, the extent of the electric field may be small or very large. Also, due to the symmetry of the charge placed at the point, the shape of the electric field will be an imaginary sphere. Inside this electric field if any other positive test charge of 1 coulomb is brought, what will be the nature of the force experienced by the unit positive charge? Yes, good. It is repulsive. As a result of repulsion, what will be the direction of motion of the unit positive charge? It will be radially outward. That means the unit positive charge will be moving along a straight line away from the central positive charge. Similarly, in the second picture, you can see a negative charge is placed at the center. Due to the symmetry of this charge, the electric field surrounding the negative charge also will be spherical in nature. What will happen if a test charge of +1 coulomb is placed at a point inside its field? Good, it will be attracted towards the negative charge. So, the positive test charge of +1 coulomb will be moving along a straight line radially inwards towards the given negative charge. These lines are imaginary lines, and these lines only are called the electric field lines or the electric lines of force. Now let us precisely define what electric field lines are. These are the imaginary, straight or curved path along which a unit positive charge tends to move in an electric field. For a positive charge, the electric field lines are directed radially outward, and for a negative point charge, the electric field lines are directed radially inward. This is a system consisting of a positive charge and a negative charge which are equal in magnitude and separated by a very small distance. This arrangement of two equal and dissimilar charges is called as an electric dipole. You know that the electric field of a positive charge will be radiated outwards. Similarly, the electric field lines of a negative charge are directed radially inwards. That is why you can see that the electric lines of force are starting from the positive charge and ending at the negative charge. At the two ends of the dipole, you can see that around the positive charge, the lines are directed outward, and the right side of the negative charge, the electric field lines are directed inward. Now let us see the electric fields for multiple point charges. In the first picture, a positive and negative point charges system is shown, which we have already seen. The lines of force start from the positive charge and end in the negative charge. In the second picture on the right side, two positive point charges are shown, and there is a repulsion between these two positive charges. So the lines of force are moving away from each other. The remaining two pictures shown below are the iron filings which are spread in a magnetic field. So the third picture depicts the magnetic lines of force between two opposite magnetic poles. The fourth picture shows the spread of the iron filings inside a magnetic field for two like magnetic poles. So students, you must know that the electric field lines are similar to that of the magnetic field lines. Let us now go through the general properties of electric field lines. 1. Field lines start from positive charges and end at negative charges. If there is a single charge, they may start or end at infinity. 2. In a charge-free region, electric field lines can be taken to be continuous curves without any breaks. 3. Two field lines can never cross each other. If they did, the field at the point of intersection will not have a unique direction which is observed. 4. Electrostatic field lines do not form any closed loops. This follows from the conservative nature of electric field. 5. The number of lines per unit area through a plane at right angles to these lines is proportional to the magnitude of the electric field E. This means that the lines are overcrowded near the charges and they are far separated away from the charges. One additional information you must remember is that these electric field lines also are called as electric flux lines. Let us now define the term electric flux, which is represented by the Greek symbol phi. Before defining electric flux, you all please go through the diagram. There are 3 pictures in the diagram. In the first picture, you count the total number of lines present in the electric field. Can you count 8 number of lines? Yes. Are these lines passing perpendicular to the area S which is held normally? Okay. Now this area which is held in the electric field is a plane area and it is getting the status of a vector. So it must have a direction. The direction of the area vector S is nothing but the perpendicular drawn to the plane surface. That is represented by n cap. So the area vector n cap in the first picture is along the direction of the electric field E. Okay. Total number of lines of electric field passing through the plane area is 8 I counted. So what must be the number of lines passing through half of the plane area? Good, it is 4. Okay, what must be the number of lines passing through 1/4 of the plane area? That's right, it is 2 lines. So when the area is becoming small, the number of flux lines passing through that area is also very less. If the area is large, then more number of electric lines are passing through the large area. So now we will define what is electric flux. The electric flux is defined as the total number of electric lines of force crossing through the given area. The electric flux delta phi through the small elementary area delta S is denoted as the dot product of 2 vectors, namely the electric field vector and the elementary area vector. That is delta phi equal to vector E dot product vector delta S, which is equal to the magnitude E into magnitude delta S into cos of the angle between the electric field vector and the area vector. That is E into delta S into cos theta, where theta is the angle between the electric field vector E and elementary area vector delta S. So delta phi is only a small flux passing through a small area delta S. Hence the total flux through the entire area capital S is given by phi equal to sigma E dot delta S. Here the approximation sign is put because the electric field capital E is taken to be constant over the small area. When you take limit delta S tending to 0, that is a very small area, then the total flux is given by phi equal to integral E dot ds, which is again equal to integral E delta S cos theta. Now you see the first picture once again. The electric field vector is along the x-axis and the area vector which is represented by n cap is also along the x-axis. So what should be the value of theta? Good. Theta equal to 0 degree. As a result, what should be the flux phi equal to? It is E delta S cos 0. Since cos 0 is equal to 1, the flux phi equal to E into delta S. In the second picture, you can see that plane area is held horizontally. Therefore, n cap, which is drawn perpendicular to the plane area, is now at right angle to the electric field E. So, what must be the angle theta here? Good, it is 90 degree. Therefore, cos 90 is equal to how much? 0. And hence the total flux phi is equal to E delta S cos 90, which is equal to 0. Definitely you can understand that no single line can pass through the given area because the area is now held horizontally. Now come to the third picture. In the third picture, the plane area is neither held horizontally nor vertically. It is in an inclined position. So the angle made by the area vector n cap with respect to the electric field E is represented as theta. Hence, the flux is given by phi equal to E delta S cos theta. The n cap vector is the unit vector along the direction of the area vector delta S. Also, delta S vector is equal to magnitude delta S into n cap. Now, what should be the SI unit of electric flux? You can guess. It must be the product of the SI unit of electric field and SI unit of area. Yes, the SI unit of electric flux is Newton meter square per coulomb. Electric dipole. As we have already defined, an electric dipole is a pair of equal and opposite point charges plus q and minus q separated by a very small distance 2a. By nature itself, there are some molecules such as the molecule of water, ammonia, carbon dioxide and chloroform, which form examples of permanent electric dipoles. Because every molecule is made up of atoms and every atom is made up of positive and negative charges. The center of gravity of positive charges and the center of gravity of negative charges may be coinciding with each other or they may be separated from each other. If the centers of positive and negative charges are separated, then such molecules behave as electric dipoles. A very good example for an electric dipole having a permanent electric dipole moment is that of water molecule. The total charge of an electric dipole is equal to 0. It is because it has two equal and opposite charges plus q and minus q. When you add plus q and minus q, the net charge of a dipole is equal to 0. Also, the strength of any dipole is expressed in terms of its dipole moment. Electric dipole moment is defined as the product of one of its charges and the distance between the charges. The dipole moment is a vector quantity and its direction is from minus q to plus q. It is given by small p vector equal to 2a vector into small q, where 2a is the distance of separation between the positive charge and the negative charge, and this 2a, the distance between the charges, is a vector quantity. The SI unit of dipole moment is coulomb into meter. Let us now derive an expression for the electric field due to an electric dipole at a point on its axial line. Consider an electric dipole consisting of two charges plus q and minus q separated by distance 2a. Let small p equal to 2aq be the magnitude of the dipole moment. Let capital P be a point at a distance small r from the midpoint of the dipole along the axial line. The electric field due to an electric dipole can be found by using Coulomb's law and principle of superposition. Before getting into the derivation of the electric field due to the dipole, let us understand a few facts. You look at the diagram, the point P from the midpoint of the dipole is at a distance small r. So, the distance of the point P from the negative charge minus q must be equal to r plus a. Similarly, the distance of the point P from the positive charge plus q must be equal to r minus a. Another very important point I would like to remind you is, if a single charge is given, there will be only a single electric field at any point due to the given charge. When there are two charges like plus q and minus q, at any point like P, there will be two electric fields. One is due to the negative charge minus q and the other one is due to the positive charge plus q. By the principle of superposition, the net electric field must be equal to the vector sum of these two fields. Okay students, now let us get into the derivation. Electric field at P due to minus q at a distance r plus a from its midpoint is given by E minus q vector, that is equal to minus 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r plus a the whole square into P cap. Similarly, the electric field at point P due to plus q at a distance r minus a from its midpoint is E plus q vector equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r minus a the whole square into P cap. You note down why the vector E minus q is having a negative sign and why E plus q is having a positive sign. It is because the E minus q vector is opposite to the direction of the dipole moment vector and E plus q vector is along the same direction of the dipole moment vector P. That is why E minus q is having a negative sign and E plus q is having a positive sign. In both the cases, P cap is the unit vector along the dipole moment vector and it acts from minus q to plus q. Total electric field at P due to the dipole is given by E vector equal to E minus q vector plus E plus q vector, and that is equal to minus 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r plus a the whole square into P cap plus 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r minus a the whole square into P cap. By substituting and minimizing the steps, the final equation for electric field is given as E vector equal to 2p by 4 pi epsilon naught r cube into P cap. This acts along the direction of the dipole moment P vector. Now let us derive an expression for the electric field due to an electric dipole at any point on its equatorial line. First of all, what is equatorial line? It is any straight line passing perpendicular to the axial line and also through the midpoint of the dipole. Consider an electric dipole consisting of two charges plus q and minus q separated by a distance 2a. Let small p equal to 2a into q be the magnitude of the dipole moment. Let capital P be a point at a distance small r from the midpoint of the dipole along the equatorial line. Before getting into the derivation, just you all look at the diagram, please. Can you see the two charges plus q and minus q? Are they separated by distance 2a? Good. Can you see the vector P which is acting from minus q towards plus q? Yes, that vector P is only the dipole moment vector. It always acts from minus q to plus q. Okay, from the midpoint of the dipole, above that, can you see a point P? Yes, that is the point P lying on the equatorial line. We want to find the electric field at this point P only. Also, you please note down, in this case, the point P is at equal distance from both plus q and minus q. Here, both the charges are at the same distance, that is square root of r square plus a square from the point P. Because it is a right angled triangle formed by the point P with the two charges. There are two right angled triangles. By applying Pythagoras theorem, you can find out the distance square is equal to r square plus a square. And so the distance of the point P from either charge is square root of r square plus a square. Now let us get into the derivation for the electric field. Magnitude of the electric field at point P due to minus q at a distance root of r square plus a square from its midpoint is given by E minus q equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r square plus a square. This is only magnitude, so there is no vector symbol here. Similarly, magnitude of the electric field at point P due to plus q at a distance square root of r square plus a square from its midpoint is E plus q equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into q by r square plus a square. This is also in a scalar form. The magnitudes E minus q and E plus q are equal, while the directions of E minus q vector and E plus q vector are different. Hence, E minus q vector and E plus q vector are resolved into horizontal and vertical components. Okay, look at the picture. The vector E plus q makes an angle theta along the horizontal. Similarly, the vector E minus q subtends an angle theta with the horizontal. Now let us resolve them into vertical and horizontal components. The vertical component of E plus q is E plus q sin theta, and the vertical component of E minus q is E minus q sin theta. The horizontal component of E plus q is E plus q cos theta, and the horizontal component of E minus q is E minus q cos theta. You tell me, students, in this picture which components may get cancelled? Yes, good. They are E plus q sin theta and E minus q sin theta. What is the reason? Because they are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. Similarly, you tell me which components may get added up. You are right. They are E plus Q cos theta and E minus Q cos theta. What is the reason? Good. Because they are acting in the same direction. Now let us come to the derivation part. The vertical components E minus Q sin theta and E plus Q sin theta cancel out. The horizontal components E minus Q cos theta and E plus Q cos theta are added up. Hence, the total electric field at point P due to the dipole is given by vector E is equal to minus of E minus Q cos theta plus E plus Q cos theta into P cap. That is equal to minus of E minus Q vector plus E plus Q vector into cos theta. Again, I want to remind you, my dear students, what is the need of the negative sign here? It is because the components E minus Q cos theta and E plus Q cos theta both are acting towards the right hand side, that is opposite to the direction of the dipole moment. That is why there is a negative sign. Okay, you look at the previous picture and get an expression for cos theta, which is equal to A by square root of R square plus A square, or cos theta equal to A by R square plus A square whole power 1 by 2. Therefore, the total electric field E vector, by substituting all the factors, and you will substitute P equal to 2AQ for the dipole moment, the final expression for the electric field is found to be capital E vector is equal to minus of P by 4 pi epsilon naught R cube into P cap. And this electric field will be acting towards the right hand side and opposite to the direction of the dipole moment. Let us define a polar molecule, which is a physical significance of an electric dipole. Polar molecule is a molecule in which the centers of positive and negative charges do not coincide. That is, the center of positive charges are separated from the center of negative charges. Such molecule will possess a permanent electric dipole moment even in the absence of an external field. Example, molecule of water. Students, when a single point charge is placed in an external electric field, it will experience a force and it will either move along the direction of the field or opposite to the direction of the field, depending upon whether it is a positive or negative charge. What will happen when an electric dipole consisting of two equal and dissimilar charges will be placed in a uniform external field? It will experience a torque and it will start rotating inside the electric field. Now let us derive an expression for the torque acting on an electric dipole in a uniform external field. See the picture. An electric dipole AB consisting of charges minus Q and plus Q separated by distance 2A is placed at an angle theta with respect to the direction of the electric field E. Can you locate the charge minus Q at A? Can you locate the charge plus Q at B? Also, can you see the distance of separation between plus Q and minus Q is 2A? What angle does this axial line makes with that of the electric field? It is theta. Now, again look at the picture. The charge plus Q will tend to rotate in the clockwise direction. It experiences a force F equal to QE. Similarly, the charge minus Q will tend to rotate in the clockwise direction but towards the left with the force F equal to minus QE acting on it. Now let us get into the derivation. Consider a dipole AB of dipole moment small p placed at an angle theta in a uniform electric field E as shown in the figure. The charge plus Q experiences a force QE in the direction of the field, that is towards the right hand side. The charge minus Q experiences an equal force minus QE in the opposite direction, that is towards the left hand side. Thus, the net force on the dipole is 0. The two equal and unlike parallel forces constitute a couple and hence exert a torque on the dipole. This torque will tend to set the dipole along the direction of external electric field E. Magnitude of the force acting on the charge plus Q is equal to plus QE. Magnitude of the force acting on the charge minus Q is equal to minus QE. Net force on the dipole is equal to plus QE minus QE equal to 0. The magnitude of the torque acting on the dipole is given by tau equal to magnitude of one of the forces into the perpendicular distance between the forces. Now look at the picture. The perpendicular distance between the two forces QE and minus QE is equal to BC. So sin theta equal to opposite side by hypotenuse. Sin theta is equal to BC divided by AB, or sin theta equal to BC divided by 2A, and hence the perpendicular distance BC must be equal to 2A sin theta. Now look at the derivation. The magnitude of the torque tau is equal to QE into 2A sin theta. I will group the terms 2A and Q separately so that tau is now equal to 2AQ into E sin theta. But the product 2AQ is equal to small p, that is equal to the dipole moment. Hence, the magnitude of the torque is tau equal to PE sin theta. But torque is a vector quantity. Hence, in vector form, tau vector is equal to the cross product of P vector and E vector. We are going to discuss now about the continuous charge distribution. There are three possibilities of charge distribution continuously. They are the linear charge distribution, surface charge distribution, and volume charge distribution respectively in 1 dimension, 2 dimension, and 3 dimensions. Now we will discuss linear charge distribution. Look at the picture. The picture contains a straight wire whose entire length is denoted by capital L, and the total quantity of charge present in the wire is denoted by capital Q. If the charge Q is uniformly distributed along the wire of length L, then its linear charge density, which is the charge per unit length, is given by the symbol lambda, and lambda equal to Q by L. Q is in coulomb and L is in meter, hence its unit is coulomb per meter. If the charge present in an infinitesimal length delta L or dl is represented by delta Q, then lambda is also equal to delta Q by delta L. Cross multiplying, delta Q is equal to lambda times delta L. You can take dl equal to delta L also. Now let us take a point P to the right hand side of the wire. At that point P, the electric field due to the infinitesimal charge dq we will find first. Look at the next step. The electric field due to the charge delta q, which is also equal to lambda times delta L, at a point which is distant r from the wire is given by delta E vector equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into delta Q by r square into r cap, which is also equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into lambda delta L by r square into r cap. In the numerator we have substituted delta Q is equal to lambda times delta L, and you must know that delta E is the electric field at the point P due to only the small quantity of charge delta Q. Hence, the electric field due to the line of total charge capital Q is E vector equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into sigma lambda dl by r square into r cap. That means you have to imagine the entire length of the wire made up of small elements of length dl. Each dl element is contributing an electric field at the point P. Hence, the total electric field at the point P must be equal to the summation of all the terms from one end of the wire to the other end of the wire. If delta L tends to 0, that means infinitesimally small, then the summation becomes an integral also. Therefore, the electric field E vector is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into integral lambda delta L by r square into r cap. The second one is surface charge distribution. Look at the diagram first. It consists of a plane surface area denoted by capital A, and inside that total area, the black portion, which is an elementary area, is denoted by dA or delta A. And if capital Q is the charge spread over the entire area, only a very few charges, namely dq or delta Q, will be stored on the small area dA. So in what we are going to do, first we consider a point P to the right hand side at a distance r from the given area. At that point P, we will write an expression for the elementary electric field contributed by the charge delta Q on the area dA, and then we take the summation of all small elementary areas and get the total expression for the net electric field. Okay, shall we go through the derivation? If the charge Q is uniformly distributed on a surface of area A, then its surface charge density is defined as the charge per unit area, and it is given by the term sigma, and sigma equal to Q by A. Q is in coulomb and A is in meter square. So its unit is coulomb per meter square. If the charge present in the infinitesimal area delta A is represented by delta Q, then sigma is also equal to delta Q by delta A. By cross multiplying, we can write delta Q is equal to sigma times delta A. As in the previous derivation, here also the electric field due to the charge delta Q is equal to delta A into sigma at a point distant r is given by delta E vector is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into delta Q by r square into r cap, which is also equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into sigma delta A by r square into r cap. So here we have substituted delta Q is equal to sigma delta A in the numerator. Hence, the electric field due to the area of total charge Q is given by E vector equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into sigma delta A by R square taken the sum of all terms into R cap. If delta A tends to 0, then the summation becomes an integral. Therefore, E vector is also equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into integral sigma delta A by R square into R cap. Volume charge distribution. First, look at the picture. It consists of a three-dimensional charge distribution of volume V, and it is assumed to be made up of small elements of elementary volume dV or delta V. Let Q be the total charge distributed over the entire volume, and dQ or delta Q be the elementary charge distributed in a small volume delta V. And P is a point at a distance R from a very small element at which the electric field has to be calculated. Now let us get into the derivation. If the charge Q is uniformly distributed in a volume V, then its volume charge density is defined as the charge per unit volume, and it is given by rho equal to Q by V. Q is in coulomb and V is in meter cube. So its unit is coulomb per meter cube. If the charge present in the infinitesimal volume delta V is delta Q, then rho is also equal to delta Q by delta V. By cross multiplying, we get delta Q is equal to rho times delta V. The electric field due to the elementary charge delta Q, that is equal to rho times delta V, at a point distant R is given by delta E vector is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into delta Q by R square into R cap, which is also equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into rho delta V by R square into R cap. Here we have substituted delta Q is equal to rho times delta V in the numerator. Hence, the electric field due to the volume of total charge capital Q is given by E vector is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into sigma rho delta V by R square into R cap, where sigma is the summation of all elementary charges rho delta V over the entire volume. If delta V tends to 0, then the summation becomes an integral. Therefore, the electric field capital E is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught into integral of rho delta V by R square into R cap. Okay students, this is the end of the PowerPoint presentation 2 in chapter 1, electric charges and fields. Hope you should have understood all the concepts. Meet you in the third PowerPoint and the final PowerPoint by which the chapter will be over. Have a good time. Bye.